Okay, and we are now recording. Hello, everyone. My name is Christina Thatcher. In case you don't know me, I am a 2009 Marshall Scholar. I'm going to be your host tonight for this poetry reading. I'm really excited to be bringing you some current scholars and two alumni, which is Elizabeth and me. I'm going to be reading through everybody's bios as we go along. But just to give you an idea of what we're going to be doing, there's going to be 3 readers after my welcome. So everybody's going to read for about 12 minutes. Then you're going to have 5 minutes or so just to have a break. So if you want to grab a drink or a cup of tea or just have a bit of a rest from the screen, you can. And then you'll be able to join us again for Elizabeth's reading and my own reading at the end. So I really hope that you'll enjoy this. To make it feel a bit official, I've got everybody's bios. I'm not sure if Ariana has joined us. She was meant to be our first reader. So I'm just gonna have a little look in the participant section. And if I can't see her, which I can't, I'm just wondering if Janel would be up for doing the reading first. Can you give me a thumbs up if I can see? Yes, she is looking like she's happy to do that. So I'm gonna keep an eye out for Ariana. I don't see her in here yet, but as soon as she joins, I'll try and jiggle around everybody. So I'm just gonna read Janel. She's gonna be opening for us today. Thank you so much for that. I'm just gonna read her bio quickly, and then she can unmute herself and do our first reading for the day. Okay, so Janel Pineda is a Los Angeles-born poet and the daughter of Salvadorian immigrants. A first-generation college graduate, Janel's research and poetry explore how diasporic Salvadorians confront the legacies of the US-sponsored Salvadorian Civil War. Janel has performed her poetry internationally in both English and Spanish. She is published in various anthologies, including The Wandering Song, Central American Writing in the United States, Accolades, Women Who Submit, and the Breakbeat Poets Volume for Latinx. Janel's poetry chapbook is forthcoming from Haymarket Books. She is currently pursuing an MA in Creative Writing and Education at Goldsmiths University of London. So we're gonna give our silent applause for Janel, who's gonna unmute and join us.
Great, thank you for that introduction, Christina, and thank you all for having me and for having poetry. I'm gonna start with a poem called Ode to the College Town Taqueria. For the tiny speaker that blasted salsa music without fail outside its door, the Spanish that seemed sung to me and only to me as my feet forced their way through the white snow. For the Mexican bandera waving fearlessly, blocks from where white men spit at us from their pickup. For the imported Jaritos bottles we sipped together, dreaming about what our families were eating back home. For the college policy that allowed events to use outside catering if and only if it was ethnic. For the dignity we swallowed to join the frat boys who lined up inside its walls and ignore the jokes they made about green cards and illegals, both in secret and publicly on their Instagrams. I swear I won't forget the feel of Fridays, huddled inside its doors, when we ordered steak tacos and not the asada, and horchata that tasted more like an iced chai than rice milk, with the last few bucks of our recent pay. Memories fond enough I could almost forgive the way the microwave tortilla broke inside our mouths. The meat, that weird rubbery crunch you've only known after reheating leftovers from your sister's quince. The queso, once fresco, sprinkled as if Parmesan on pizza. And of course, the green gunk disguised as salsa scooped stingily on top. But I won't lie, there were days I enjoyed every last bite. This next poem is called How English Came to Grandma. English first met Grandma in Salvador as she cut and peeled mangos, sandia, and mamey. Before the war, the Beatles blared from the small radio in her kitchen, and 20-something-year-old Elba danced to A Hard Day's Night, singing English into existence in a place it never should have arrived. Like a work of brujeria, English enamored her into thinking the US perfect. For grandma, everything Americano was soaked in English, and she wanted to bathe in that language's ocean, no matter how bloody she pretended it didn't look. Inglés la conquistó a pura paja, won her over with its haughty looks, meaningless words and chanting all the same. English stuck its tongue down her throat, then bewitched her feet to follow it. Grandma tells me she fled in search of it, traced its footprints up the isthmus to the place of its power, Los Estados Unidos, the obvious place to go, the place where everybody ended up whether they wanted to or not, because come on, where else would they go to the place to which they all belonged? No, I don't mean they belong there. I mean they belonged to. All this to tell you the story about how grandma still does not speak English, how she tried wrestling it once, but it twisted her tongue. So instead, she clings to grandma and never abuela, her I love yous instead of te quiero, her Beatles lyrics, her thick accented yes ma'am and right away ma'am from her job cleaning houses in Woodland Hill, Pasadena, sometimes even Beverly Hills, her Spanglish and her I'm so sorry's. Because if she knows anything about English, it's how much that language demands her to apologize. English. It made its home hovering around my body the first 4 years of my life. Sometimes it tired and rested in my shadow, trailed slimy red and sticky, but always it waited. It knew my hatred for it would pass, that I'd find my way to its lap soon. I'd rest my head on its shoulder, curl up against fragmented bone and let it dig its hands around my spine. English was patient because it knew it would win. In this country, I wouldn't be able to resist much longer. Sometimes I think I can still hear English's cackle when at 4 years old I proclaimed, "No me hable así. Yo no hablo inglés y nunca lo hablaré." Weeks later, in kindergarten, I let English reign over in my body, let myself soak in its liquid power, dizzied myself in its winding river, made its waters the language I tell stories in, built a home in its classes, declared a major in its body, chased it up the Thames to the world's oldest English-speaking university, tossed away Spanish, reserved it for Saturdays sometimes, or visits to grandma's. And even now, the only Spanish that lives in this poem is faint memory, the words of a younger, braver self. And now I'm afraid, because I bet English is sitting somewhere in this room, watching as I speak, clutching its stomach, rolling over in laughter at how I typed these words, sometimes first in Spanish, and then backspaced my return to English. English laughs and laughs and laughs. I know that one's a tough one, so I hope y'all are hanging in okay. I'm gonna read my last poem and just wanna thank you all for listening. This is called In Another Life. In another life. The war never happened, but somehow you and I still exist. Like obsidian, we know only the memory of lava and not the explosion that created us. Forget the gun-down church, the burning flesh, the cabbage soup. There is no bus, there is no border, there is no blood. There are only sweet cornfields and mango skins. the turquoise house and clotheslines, a heaping plates of pasteles and curtido waiting to be disappeared into our bellies. In this life, our people are not things of silences, but whole worlds bursting into breath. Everywhere, there are children playing freely, clothed and clean. Mozote does not mean massacre, and flowers bloom in every place shoes are left behind. My name still means truth, this time in a language my mouth recognizes, in a language I know how to speak. My grandmother is still a storyteller, although I am not a poet. In this life, I do not have to be. This poem somehow still exists. It is told in my mother's voice, and she makes hurt dissolve like honey in hot water, manzanilla warming the throat. You and I do not find each other on another continent, grasping at each other's necks in search of home. We meet in a mercado, my arms overflowing with mamey and lanonas, and together we wash them in river water. We watch sunset fall over a land we call our own and do not fear its taking. I bite into the fruit, mouth sucking seed from substance, pulling its veins from between my teeth. Our laughter echoes from inside the cave, one we are free to step outside of. We do not have to hide here. We do not have to hide anywhere. A torogos flies past my face, and I do not fear its flapping. Thank you.
That was absolutely fantastic. Thank you so much. That was just a wonderful reading, and I hope that you could see everybody clapping in their homes for those amazing poems. So thank you so much, Janelle. Okay, so I think that Ariana has arrived. Ariana, if you're somewhere in this wide room, would you unmute yourself for a second? Or if you could say that you're here, I just want to make sure it's, oh, I see you. Hi!
Hey. Sorry about that. Had some technical difficulties.
Absolutely no worries at all. So if you're happy, I will read your bio now and you could join us for your reading. That's wonderful. Thank you. Okay, I'm going to read Ariana's bio. And then she is also going to delight us with some poems. So Ariana Benson is an accomplished poet, having performed poetry at the Decatur Book Festival for the last 2 years and twice becoming a finalist for the Edith A. Hamble Poetry Prize. Her honors thesis explored the use of creative mediums such as poetry and screenwriting as a means of preserving and curating collective memory for the descendants of the African diaspora. Please help me welcome Ariana.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Christina. That was a wonderful introduction. I really appreciate it. Okay, so hi guys. I'm going to start with a little bit of a journey. So these poems take place in outer space, and these poems are a way to explore climate change, but kind of through speculative future. So in this future, the Earth has passed away and the other planets are at its funeral, eulogizing our beloved home planet. And so these first two poems are written from the perspective of Mars and Venus. So Mars speaks. It was always said that Earth would succumb to her own melted blue, but first she drowned in smoldering red. And now you humans mark me, boots imprinting shallow coffins in my skin, palms tinted copper with rust. Earth shone a brilliant green because I absorbed her red, the light crimson rage she concealed, a fury tinted blue, gray, brown, never red. The lone hue that may have halted her descent into black. Dying, she donned the very shade in which I live. At last, she wore the fury she for so long righteously refused. Oh, how you adored your doomed martyr. But let your worship But your worship means less than the names with which you christened us. Let us not forget that we are here to grieve the earth in all her selfless glory, not her parasites, with your insatiable bloodlust for green. You took her green, but from me you will get nothing but red. I will never grant you the peace of knowing whether the red that stains your hands is earth's blood, or my dust, or my blood, or even your own. So this one is now from Venus's perspective. Venus searches for her fallen sister. I sift through the stars, searching for pieces of you. In the asteroids Jupiter hurls your way, the meteors that marl Mercury's flesh, the ocean's blues in Neptune, the sea's teals blanketing Uranus, the striations of sediment shed skin patterned like Saturn's rings. Just when I've nearly reconstructed you, I remember your inimitable green. I blend cerulean methane with ammonium gold, turquoise hydrogen with my own amber gas, but I can't create your luminous hue. It pains me to know I will never again feel the color of your life bleeding into the blank pale of mine. You were so much more then, and yet still always beautiful. And if nothing else, humans love things that are beautiful. So they gorged on the verdants, sipped the absinthe of your flora. Love in the face of beauty is the most intoxicating hallucinogen. They saw your green and took it to mean life, vibrance, a thriving. But beauty, like spectral color, is visible only in its own absence, in the presence of everything it is not. As you are beautiful to them only now that you are gone. And now green light smothers everything with its invisible, sickly sheen of death. And now that everything is green, nothing truly is. And everything is beautiful, and nothing is. All right, so sticking with the space poetry theme, this next poem is from the perspective of humans who may have had to move to Mars after Earth has passed away, but it's a little bit more of a kind of angelic look at what a world on a new planet could be if we could start everything over. So this is On Mars. 1. I was never much one for astronomy. My basic grasp of the universe and its terrifying contents satisfied me most of my life. Pluto was a planet, then wasn't, then was again. I think I didn't go outside to witness the eclipse because I've spent too many moons for obstacles to pass between my world and its light, for celestial corpses to align. To call them bodies implies life, and humans have long known Earth only as a ghost. But when I saw that water has been found on Mars, I felt a knot. Then my heart urged my tongue to curl into hope. I see life blossoming, bundles of cells that compose bodies instead of confining them. I see babies, tiny feet splashing in the puddles from which their very existence sprung. I see water on Mars and know my children must never call home by any other name. 2. Our backyard awash in desert rust will fashion palaces from red sand, all the while sipping tea sweetened with spoonfuls of stardust. When winter rains turn craters into lakes, we'll skate atop their frosted faces, and in summer laze in their pooled relief from the heat. The natal knowledge of how to swim, having never fled a single child's mind. They'll have a galaxy of nebulae to nightly gaze upon, eyes bathed in cool slate, absent scorching white sun. Gravity and alien bondage, they'll play ball, palm entire planets, bound through the asteroid belt, swing from Saturn's rings with their fingertips. Astral amphibians, they'll breathe purified pink sky through their skin. Not a single gasp will escape their grip. 3. On Mars, there are no guns. What good are bullets that can be batted down like balloons bleeding air? My children will thrive. They'll climb mountains only to leap fearless from the peaks and drift back to Mars, serene like leaves in a mild autumn breeze, colorful and bright and beautiful and whole. Their spirits will have all of outer space to reach their true peaks and drift back to me, colorful, bright, beautiful, whole. Thank you. Okay, so I am going to read one more poem. We're coming back down from outer space now, actually to a location right where I am right now. So I'm in Virginia, I'm from Virginia, and one of our best landscapes that we have is the Great Dismal Swamp. It's really key to Atlantic coastal history, just in terms of what happened there, particularly with how the nation was built. It was a really key site for transit and just carrying things, but it also was built upon the system of enslavement that built upon the country. And so I've grown up in an area with this really long trail called Moses Grandy Trail. And I always wondered, well, who is Moses Grandy? What should I know him for? And so I looked up, I did some research, and Moses Grandy is actually the one who carved the Dismal Swamp as we know it today. And so I thought it would be a really beautiful idea to write a love letter from the Great Dismal Swamp to Moses Grandy, who built it and spent most of his life there going through the waters of the swamp. So here's my poem. Dear Moses Grandy, love the Great Dismal Swamp. Here, among snakes, bears, and panthers, I felt myself so light that I could almost fly, and in my sleep, I was always dreaming of flying over woods and rivers. Moses Grandy. I send swarms of insects in the shape of your ghost. They are not wrong to think me haunted, possessed as I am by spirits exhumed from bodies left strewn in my wake. I trick them into thinking me God, but to them I am Eden, paradise of poison and beasts. I steep sweat from their flesh, sip it in pinpricks with the tongues of jewel-toned bees. I spill their blood in your name. When it seeps into my murk, I turn a deep maroon hue, and I remember you, fondly, of nights when there was nothing but you and me, moonlight and wind rustling in my reeds, a southern serenade. I like to think you knew I heard you, and that you heard me back. Now they smelt asphalt into my arteries, litter the air with my ashes. I watch myself burn and I search for your face in the flames. I knew you once, mixture of marsh and man, sometimes just pure black beads sunk into star-white glow, glinting in the glass of my stillness. In the cover of darkness, you snuck nips of raw honeysuckle, lugged juniper wood through my mud. Like your namesake, you made many waters from my one, and like the Red Sea, I opened, bared my soul to your people, and closed to your tormentors. I cherish the holy honor of being parted by your hands. I long for the day when your boat gently unzipped my quiet mire. You said then you would not have left me for heaven itself. So I drag them through the hell they wanted me to be for you. Thank you. Thank you so much.
All those poems were wonderful, Ariana. Thank you so much. I don't think we could have ever, what more could you want than space poems and love poems? This is fantastic. I'm so grateful to you. Absolutely wonderful reading. Thank you. So we're going to move on to our third reader. Gosh, this is going fast, isn't it? So we've got Antonio up next. I'm going to read out his bio and then he is going to join us. So here we go. Born and raised in East Palo Alto, California, Antonio Lopez received his BA in Global Cultural Studies and African American Studies from Duke University. He's received scholarships to attend the community of writers at Squaw Valley, Tin House, and the Vermont Studio Center. He is a proud member of the Macondo Writers Workshop and Canto Macondo Fellow. His nonfiction has featured or is forthcoming in PEN America, the Latino Book Review, and Insider Higher Education, and his poetry in the New Republic, Tin House, and elsewhere. In 2019, he was a runner-up for the inaugural Palette Poetry Spotlight Award, as well as the recipient of the Catherine Bakeless Nelson Award in Poetry for the Breadloaf Writers Conference. He received his master's in fine arts poetry at Rutgers, Newark. As a 2018 Marshall Scholar, he is finishing a master's in philosophy and modern Middle Eastern studies at the University of Oxford. His debut collection, Gentrification, is the winner of the 2019 Levis Prize in Poetry and is set to be published by Four Way Books in September 2021. So Antonio, if you're happy to unmute yourself, you can start. Please welcome him to the Zoom stage.
Can everybody hear me?
Yep.
All right. Thanks everyone for the opportunity. It's really great to share poems in this really funky time, and I hope that like what I have to present. I'm gonna be reading some poems from the collection that Christina just mentioned, Gentrification. So just to give you a backdrop, it's a really nerdy book. It's organized like a syllabus. So the sections are are very academic oriented, and it's a commentary about how me having to navigate higher education as a first-gen Latino student. And so you're gonna just hear some poems that are touching across different aspects of my life and my parents as well, academic and personal. So the first one is just a quick like show of hands. Has anyone, just a little hand like this, have people read The Things They Carried, the short story? Yeah. All right, perfect. Well, this is called Las Chacharas They Carried. And chachara is just like a Mexican slang word for like wares. Like you go to flea market and you buy like little bits here and there to wear, like things to get. Las chacharas they carried. Señora, quede clara. 1, discount shaving cream. 2, tortillas wrapped in black plastic bags. 3, the telephone number of USCIS. 4, Vaporub, which in Spanish translates to comprehensive healthcare. 5, a child's nosebleed. What's the intention of your visit? 6, a child who stirs awake as the NyQuil is starting to wear off. 7, Father's sombrero that she promised to never take off the wall. If I search your vehicle, will I find anything? 8, soap camouflaged as sea salt. 9, La Madrugada, whose border town haze stains mother's dress. 10, an analog TV set to plop my chubby brown hijo in front of Sesame Street. Ma'am, please step outside. So the second one is called Primaria, and Primaria is just, it means primary, but it means primary school, because a lot of the world uses primary, secondary. In Mexico, they use Primaria for elementary school. It's called Primaria. Because when Theo first cried, I was already a man. Porque aquí, lo que uno gana diario es un mes en Mexico. Because when his family left and he had to stay, we numbed our lips with Fruit Loops. Because when homeboys bent down to tie their shoes, one of us made a slurping sound. Because Christian wore his shorts a little too tight. Because we all thought Mr. Fitch was just being friendly to the girls. Because Mrs. Fitch changed her last name. Because in Disney movies, we're always Chihuahuas. Because when Darius and I dapped, plum elbows shot up from his shirt, my chest flushed. Because childhood was women trying on high heels. And Vane laughed when I said, the yellow pair looks cute. So as y'all know, California has a ton of cities in Spanish, and that's kind of obvious. And if not, then, you know, that's a little history for you. And so obviously it also has a deeply religious, you know, you see missions. I mean, growing up, we had to do missions like on 4th grade. I think they got rid of that, but you had to do these mission projects. And like, can you imagine how like wild that is? Like just doing that and not knowing the colonial backdrop to all this. And you're like 10 years old. And anyway, it's a whole thing, right? And so this poem, it's a bit more short. It's called The Disciples of San Mateo County, California. So it's a bit of exploration about middle school and that kind of history. The Disciples of San Mateo County, California. And God said to Juventino, perform ablution over the bathroom sink. Press the cold metal with novice palms. Stretch out your double white tee, the cotton bullet-proof vest where upon stepping in the schoolyard, you'll face juvenile punches. Brace the iron gates with knockoff Cortezes. Cuff your sagging Dickies by the ankle. Saunter through the cracked voices of boys who laugh without claim over their bodies. Unzip your brother's fur jacket and take father's flask. Drink from a centenario. Shadowbox the heavy gavel swings with swigs of your own. Cleanse yourself in liquor's kerosene. Let flammable spirit purge all nerves. To be an acolyte, embalmed in hair gel, worshiping the altars cordoned off in caution tape, is sainthood. So as I said, it's a really nerdy book, you know, and you can all see why in a second. I know we all do because we're all pretty, you know, academically there, I guess we should say. Do folks remember when we had an AP US history, the DBQ? Yeah, remember that? And then when you had the document-based questions. And so basically it's like you have like you have all these primary sources, and you have to then write up this kind of argument based on these primary sources. So let's say like World War I, you get speech of like this historical figure, and you have to type up some kind of argument based off those sources. So what if I said I did the same thing, but with the primary source or like from my own experiences? But you know, if I'm going to do this whole spin on that, I have to figure out what's the grading of it. So this poem is called Grading Rubric. So here's the grading rubric for all of you. Trauma is weighted as follows. Formal essays, 55 to 65%. Right children of immigrants, 10%, double if undocumented. Right first generation, 15%. Mention the color of the Coyote's van, 10%. Keep family in the past tense, 5%. Write birthplace next to its murder capital rate, 20%. In class, 35. Don't correct them when they say your name wrong, 5%. Go by Tony starting sophomore year, 10%. Stay quiet when they make fun of Keisha, 5%. Believe Tim when he says you just got in because you're 10%. When it's your turn to read, pronounce it like they do, Guatemala, 5%. Participation, 10%. Turn to the person next to you. Debate your belonging. And yeah, thanks everyone. I know these aren't the most uplifting of poems, but they're important. And I'm gonna finish off with, I think it's the decently in their kind of tone. It's not too heavy, it's a little bit, but I'm just gonna find it. I'm pretty much just scrolling through my collection, so that's why you see me kind of talking back and forth. Okay, so in the little bit of art history that I've done, which is slim to nothing, there is like this term called the triptych, right? So religious iconography, you have this kind of picture of three different paintings, and then usually it's like religious, it's of a Christ or some kind of saintly figure. And so this triptych I'm doing again is a lot of where I grew up has been pretty much gentrified or is going to develop, and so a lot of that past is kind of jostling with the modern and in these really troubling ways. And so the title of the poem is called Triptych of the Adobe Kata Army, and the idea of the terracotta army of from back in ancient China. I remember reading it in 6th grade. So this poem is called Triptych of the Adobe Kata Army, East Palo Alto, circa 2000 AD. My fingers are desperate to unearth the ruins of my countrymen, only to find a Tesla on the 2nd floor of our apartments, now a parking garage. The Amazon logo smirks above me like a biblical cloud. Out here, hooded saints toward the covenant of earthly silence, passed out zigzag leaflets to preach the gospel of skin-whirling dervishes in long white tees, bum rush me. I'm at a bautizo, pressed against my lips, the cholo chalice, my chest flushed at watching boys bronze into Adobe Kata. A driveway floodlight, the barrio's moon casted their bodies as they placed bets against the armors they carried, a fist tucked inside a hoodie, his knuckles spelling the names of ex-lovers, each letter tatted with a rusted clip, cocked belt buckle whose color shouted to the block who he fucks with, until asphalt swallows him again, and Maria's Namorn Jesus outside a sagging fence, wreath his chain link with lit candles, cardboard signs saying, "We miss you," streamers without the heated balloon that promised flight. Consider the clothesline as a bandolier, slung over weathered soldiers, whose uniformes still clung to apartment balconies, quien se dieron sus tierras to raise the wrinkled flags of blusas and neon vests. Consider this Aztec sacrifice. A father offers an empire his daily flesh, kneels on the melted tar of its tongue, winces at the body turned legal tender, all to nurse the newborn with this vision, una vida mejor. And so Father cradled my head inside asphalt and prayed for our right to simply wade. Thanks everyone for being so patient with me as I read.
Antonio, that was absolutely incredible. I can't wait for your book next year. Thank you so much for that fantastic reading. What a joy it has been really to hear these three scholars. Thank you all so much, our current scholars. This has just been so wonderful. As promised, we are going to have just a little bit of a break right now because as you can probably feel, poetry is an emotional thing to watch and to experience. And also technology and kind of doing it in this way can be a bit tiring. So we're just going to have a 5-minute break now, come back at 5:50. So if everybody, you want to, I'll keep you muted. You can turn off your videos if you like, but I just want you to take some time now, grab a drink, step outside for a minute, and then we'll be back at 5:50 to have Elizabeth do her reading, and then I'll finish up at the end. So thank you so much. We're gonna have a little break now, and I'll see you all back here in 5. Thanks. Okay, so it's technically 5:51 now. This is the time in a normal poetry reading where everybody would be kind of mingling and having drinks and chatting together. So it feels kind of strange to all just be in our separate houses doing our thing. But I really hope that you just enjoyed that little bit of time to have a break and refresh your drink. And are looking forward to the sort of second half of our event. Oh, I see everybody's video is coming on. It's like a city lighting up. This is lovely. Okay, so everybody is mostly coming back and trickling in. I'm really delighted to introduce our first alum for tonight. So I'm gonna read Elizabeth's bio for everybody before she starts reading. That sound okay for you, Elizabeth?
Yes.
Excellent. All right, so here we go. As a poet, Elizabeth Chapman was a late bloomer. Although born into a literary family, her parents edited and published the Writer magazine and the Writer's Handbook. She wrote her first poem at the age of 43. Employed as a college teacher of English, Renaissance literature, and for 20 years, a psychotherapist in private practice, she lives and works in Palo Alto, California. Her poetry has appeared in numerous journals, including Poetry, Santa Clara Review, Blue Line, and Rattle. Her chapbook, Creek Walker, was published by Mother Tongue Press in 1995. She has seen 2 full-length collections into print, Candlefish, the University of Arkansas Press in 2004, and Light Thickens, Ashland Poetry Press in 2009. Since the year 2000, she has been a member of the Squaw Valley Community of Writers. So please join me in giving a warm welcome to Elizabeth.
Thank you so much. Can you hear me okay? Okay, great. Well, thank you, everybody. I want to thank the Marshall Commission and specifically now today, Mary and Christina for making this happen. This is a novel experience and I'm thrilled. Today is Earth Day and I would like to start, I will get to my more personal poems in my new chapbook in a minute, but I think it's right for me anyway to mark April 22nd. And I have a poem called The Nesting Turtle at Matura Beach, Trinidad. One of the more memorable all-nighters of my life was staying up in Trinidad with guides to watch a leatherback turtle come ashore and lay her eggs. They're very protected now in Trinidad. Our group did exactly as we were told. And I want to say that it may sound strange in the poem that I touched the turtle, but we were encouraged to because when she is laying her egg, she goes into a complete trance and is unaware of any other presence. So everything that happened with permission and under supervision, and it was a miracle. Okay, then, and I guess these are very unusual, disturbing in a way, last line, but the premise of the poem is that animals and creatures of this earth help us, and we are obligated to help and preserve them. So, the nesting turtle at Matura Beach, Trinidad. She pants, and the whole sea exhales midnight, ruffling a palm. Lifting her head, she weeps her eyeballs clean, still in that trance of birth. How much pounds she weigh? Leather and bone, 400. Ashore, this palazzo of dark, our kindled faces above her. She's soft there. I stroke her neck fold. She make plenty babies. The eggs free falling are white. They glisten. She camouflage. Those rear paddles sweep coarse sand over her body. Its huge flask now pivoting through coconut velvet to the Atlantic, her jellyfish food. She is saving my life. I had changed notes, but I did have to, I think it was important to mark Earth Day. I have a new chapbook called Midnight Exhibition at the Wheatgrass Saloon. It is both an elegy for my late partner, who was, and I will illustrate this, a magician, a painter, and a fisherman. Much of these poems take place in Montana, which was his soul home, and I spent some time there as well. I also want, it is besides an elegy, it really is meant to be a portrait of the relationship in some of its fullness and humor. So it isn't just sad, but there is a kind of sad undernote, which you will see. So the first poem, Midnight Exhibition, marks what actually turned out to be his last art exhibition. He was a painter of note. His form was the monotype. And in Montana, above a bookstore, Elk River Books, there is indeed a place called Wheatgrass Saloon, where there was an art exhibition in 2016, and it was both monotypes, which was his chosen form. It's a reverse image executed on an etching press, and photographs of Las Vegas. He grew up in Atlantic City. He loved neon, and he loved chorus girls. So it was an odd mix of serious monotypes, and this is the poem. It's set in Livingston, Montana, near where he had a house in Prey, Montana. And Livingston is where the film River Runs Through It was filmed. It was not, that was not the river of the book, but anyway, Livingston has a history of fishing and much more. Arts. Midnight exhibition at the Wheatgrass Saloon. When the skies elderberry dark like this, I will go back to that evening up the steep flight of stairs and the green velvet couch where you held court and barely sipped the scotch you'd asked for. And the town folk came round the magic in the paintings though the Las Vegas photos, neon and chorus girls did mildly shock them. And when they'd all left, we walked hand in hand through the sleet down the alley of September. I will go back and it will pierce me. Your bright blue shirt, the silver buckle, full cowboy attire, including the forest green beaver hat and horsehair band you wore, the turquoise ring bejeweling the night, and the wind that never quite leaves Paradise Valley. It will blow the door off your car if opened carelessly. So that's the beginning. Okay, slight detour. He started as a magician at a very youthful age. I am a recovering good girl, and he was a born rebel. Very interesting combination. Very good for, in a way, good for both of us. So here is Matt Phillips at a young age. He started magician, age 8. He's speaking now. A bulb would light up in my room when my mother's foot reached the top step. Upstairs, a thin wire lurked beneath the hall carpet, firmly tacked, an early gift for misdirection. So he had a way of letting himself know when his, and she never found it. So that was his mix to the side. Right. In Montana, which was new to me, he had his etching press. And I will write about, I've written about his house on it's called House on Yellowstone Trail. One evening there. There will be plenty of dark to pray in very soon. Beyond our ken, the eyes of animals search the dusk. I grab the sack of wild bird seed we picked up in Emigrant. It's open, spilling over, and squinting at the plan the builder left, throw a handful then another at the base of each new tree. Poplar, cottonwood, choke cherry, blue spruce. A sudden gust clatters the chairs on the porch. Trails of seed like gold beads, like exotic roe, diffuse. You're still working in the studio to steal the last light. A hover of trout, a grist of bees, a husk of hares incandescing in the prints on the etching press. The air is moist, sticky, a dough. Tonight it will rain. That's what it was like there. He was very explicit. He died in 2017. He was very explicit, not wanting a memorial, but the neighborhood sprang up and did things that they needed to do anyway. And I learned in the middle of the winter that a neighbor down the road had planted a tree on his property in his honor. And the name of the poem is, the Latin botanical name is for the Canada red cherry. And rivers are beginning to come into this, so we'll hear the trout first, then there'll be more. Prunus virginiana demissa. Even now the trout rise, reaching toward their future. It is the warming of things. Ripples of you reverberate along the river, and today a red cherry tree was planted in your honor. May it grow hardy and generous of blossom. Well, I went to Squaw Valley and wrote poems there, and Antonio is an alum, he'll know too. One is obligated, compelled, and honored to write a new poem every single day. And it's there that I felt I wrote poems that I never would have written elsewhere. And I was finally able to do it. So in 2018, I went and I wrote a poem, as I say, that I would not have written anywhere else. It's called Finding You. And it's in the form of a letter. And I think this and one more will kind of give you the portrait. Enough. MP. Love lies where it falls. 15 months since you died. I don't know what happens after death, but you sure visit me a lot. I dreamed we were at one of the bars here in Squaw Valley, sharing a weak chicotini, vodka, clamato, and the secret, a small cloud of pepperoncini juice. Here's my promise for when I'm propelled off this planet. Energy is never lost in this universe, so I will find you wherever you and your spirit happen to be hanging out. Your arms will be strong as ever, and I will wrap mine around you. Careful not to squeeze your bad shoulder. Where there's no natural light, our interiors will be lit exclusively by 100-watt incandescent light bulbs that I will go to jail if need be to protect and preserve. Kind of fun, nutty, right? But you always said, I'm the nuttiest woman you ever met. Remember the Paddington books we got at Hatchard's for your grandson? I won't appear as a bear from darkest Peru, but might wear a label. Please look after this human. No marmalade required. One more thing. For the nights when you go to sleep and I cannot, I'll bring plenty of murder mysteries. We always come back to laughter. E. So, thank you. One more. And this speaks to the fisherman that he was. And another thing about the trout, I have to say it because of eco things and so on. The trout in Montana are caught and released. These are not trout that we took home to eat. But as the neighbor put it, one of his great delights was, quote, harassing the trout in the big rivers of Montana. And I was allowed to go on float trips so long as I stayed in the back of the boat, wrote in my notebook, and did not say a word. Very difficult for a poet, but I had to, and they fished, he and the guide. A year after he died, the guide and I took a trip down our favorite river, the Stillwater. And this is the poem, and this will be my last poem. This hour of limestone light. We've been tallying bald eagles, and we're at 5, a true convocation, mustering on the east wind. Just 2 of us today, the guide and me, floating downriver, when we come to a sign, hand-lettered, caution, wrecked raft at Beartooth Drop. Its twisted frame abandoned on the far bank, like a mattress at the dump, which is how we learned that the old way of navigating will not work now. On the diagonal, then sideways, and back a little, we maneuver to the edge, tasting white water, a roaring, and we're down. Peace falls upon us, the ospreys and mergansers coexisting there. I'm going to catch one for Matt. He's putting on waders, jumping out in the shallows, and soon, here's a brown trout, smallish, whose scales overlapping become the minutes, the seconds, the past. It's like nothing else. What would I give for one more day, just you and me beside the river and the chairs set up for lunch? You don't need me to tell you that. Ask the cottonwoods rustling. Ask the still water. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Elizabeth, thank you so much for that reading. There was so much love and gentleness and tenderness in these poems. They were really wonderful. So it was great to hear them.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Okay, so I cannot believe how quickly this has all gone. I'm going to be taking off my sort of metaphorical host hat and putting on my reader's hat now, because I'm going to be your last reader for today. So thank you, first of all, to all of the readers who've come before. You are all incredibly tough acts to follow. So today I'm going to be reading to you from my brand new poetry collection called How to Carry Fire. I won't read my own bio, but I can tell you just a little bit about myself in case you don't know me. So my name is Christina Thatcher. As I mentioned in the beginning, I'm a 2009 Marshall. I currently live in Cardiff, Wales, and have been here for 10 years. And I did my Marshall at Cardiff University in, I did an MA there in teaching and practice of creative writing, and then did a second MA at York University in the Equity Issues of Education department. So I looked at social justice and education. I'm just finishing up my PhD now in bereavement and creative writing, and I'm a full-time lecturer at Cardiff Metropolitan University. So I'm on my second book, which is really exciting. So that's what I'm going to be sharing with you today. So this book was written, How to Carry Fire, was written sort of in response to something that I've carried with me my whole life, well, my whole adult life. When I was 21, my father burnt down our childhood home. He had a drug addiction problem, and as a result of that, our childhood home was burnt to the ground. That kind of was the catalyst for a lot of things in my life, and I didn't really know how to write about it until very recently. So this collection is really starting off with that fire and what it means to carry fire in both a literal sense and a metaphorical sense. So the first poem I'm going to read to you is the first poem in the collection, which is called Insurance Report. Here we go. After the fire, we had 48 hours to produce exact numbers. How many forks? How many pairs of underwear? How many items in the fridge? Unable to remember every object, we were only certain of what was lost. The stained glass unicorn, that Sioux tribe necklace, our grandfather's final brick. We cried out for these totems. Who are we without them? Who are we? Only the inspectors answered back. But what were they worth? What were they worth? Thank you. So this next poem, oh, it's so lovely to see everyone clapping silently in their rooms. Thank you. So this next poem is called Arson. To be considered arson, a fire must be set with intent to endanger. If a building is occupied and the fire kills people inside, this is first degree. If a building is unoccupied but destroyed, this is second degree. If a fire causes danger, undefined, but no one dies, this is third degree. But the statutes are unclear about what happens when you live in an arsonist family, and every home you occupy burns to the ground again and again. And every night you must get quicker at rebuilding, at practicing shallow breathing when the smoke enters your room. And you must learn the art of prevention, to collect wet wood, braid bedsheet ropes for window escapes, pour cat litter into gasoline tanks. The statutes are unclear about what happens when you inherit arson, when you cut your arm and bleed. Fire, fire. Thank you. So there's a lot in this book about inheritance. So I, of course, write about this fire, the literal fire that burnt down our home and sort of legacy of that. But I also write about the sort of destructive fires that run through my family. So this often has to do with addiction. My father died of a drug overdose, and my brother is a heroin addict currently. So he has struggled with addiction for a lot of his life. So I'm gonna move to kind of think about this inheritance with this poem called Siblings. We talk first of what we inherit. I say I have Dad's thunderous voice, never get to be invisible. I say his rounded body mirrors mine, makes it difficult to jump from the ground onto a horse. We never had a good center of gravity. You say you flush for attention like him, need to know you are loved every minute, and if not, anger. You say your arms are his, track marked and pink, too weak to lift your wasting body. When I talk to you, I talk to him. When you talk to me, you talk to him. When we talk to each other, he comes to move our mouths until we hardly hear ourselves. So in a way, this collection forms a kind of truth-telling, a kind of autobiography or memoir of this experience. So half the collection is set in America and deals with the fire, and then half comes to the UK. And it really is a continuation of my first collection, More Than You Were, which is about my dad's overdose. And I think, you know, the things that have followed me since being here are these kind of memories and the kind of experiences that I've had to go through with my family. And while I was writing this book, my brother had one of his many wobbles and many difficulties with detox. So I wrote this poem about that, which is another destructive force that runs through my life. This is called Detox Passage, after William Brewer. You find spoons everywhere, under kitchen cabinets, inside comforters, poking through boxer briefs. Yesterday, you sat on the sofa and discovered spoons had replaced stuffing. You cut open cushions, heaved out hundreds. This is a clearing process. You dream only of metal. The pastor tells you this is normal. You must simply let go of the spoons. You accept this, but the sink still fills up with silver. The shower spits sterling. Rid yourself of temptation, my son. The pastor has our father's blue-green eyes. You listen and nod. Throw out every spoon in the house. You tell the pastor you can do it. You believe you can do it. God is with you, my son. The jerks in your arms and teeth begin to go. All you had to do was rid yourself of temptation. You thank God for new strength. Bow your head and pray for more good, more clean. But every time you close your eyes, you see that silver curve and linger. Thank you. So I'm just going to read you two more poems about Tim, my brother, and his relapse. And then I promise we're kind of going to move toward the light, because these are quite dark poems for the final bit of our reading. So unfortunately, my brother was wobbling a lot with his detox and eventually relapsed, which was really devastating. I mean, it is a cycle. So this poem is about his relapse. It's very short. Relapse. You count down minutes until after dinner you claim the casserole didn't agree. Head upstairs, bolt the door, slip from your pocket a spoon and needle you've saved as easy as a child slides their favorite pencil from the case. Then find the right vein and you're off. A faint smell of bathroom lavender, the last thin tether to our world. Thank you. So I'm just going to read one last poem about Tim. This poem is kind of another layer of the fire that runs through, which is about anxiety. So when you love someone who has an addiction, I think you are always worried about them. You kind of carry that with you. It's quite destructive and corrosive force. So this is one of these poems about my worries. It's called Bad Things, after Ellen Bass. You are going to lie to the women you love. One with a bow purse and lop-eared bunny, one with stomach scars and wrist tattoos, both whose fathers died like ours. You are going to learn to drink slowly until vodka no longer burns, until after 6 shots you can still drive through deer-filled Durham streets. You are going to pass out on the tar thrower, methadone nursing your bones until you're too weak to lay cement. Jobs will stop calling you. You are going to lose your phone, therapist, house, women, and all the while you will write to me to say, I'm okay, I'm okay. Tell me you still have somewhere warm to stay, but I'll know you are driving to the city in a car that will run out of gas, and then into the attics who all the bad things happen to, you will disappear. Thank you. So I'm sure that many of us, when we first arrived to the UK as Marshall Scholars, we kind of started to notice our difference, like, you know, being American. And in Cardiff, there aren't tons of Americans here, you know. So every time I'm in a taxi, people ask me about my family, people ask me about what they're like. And that's a really strange experience for me, given some of the things that you've just heard. So I wrote this poem not long after I moved here, actually. This is called Transport Decisions. The taxi driver asks if my parents live in Wales or the US, and I tell him Pennsylvania, but decide to lie about the rest. Just pretend they are both still alive. Dad fishing in Lake Knockemixon, mom riding horses in Dunroman. I tell the driver they are still married, 20 years, that I have a brother, he's healthy, we are close. The car swells with stories of hot dog eating contests, high school graduations. For these few minutes in this Cardiff cab, we are a happy American family, shining like polished apples, clean as Sunday clothes. Thank you. So I hope that those of you who are still in the UK, and perhaps those who will come visit when we're allowed to move around the country again, will come to Wales. I know I see John in the audience, and he also lives here in Wales. I have to say, I arrived here, it was so scary, kind of leaving a very uncertain life, and I'm sure we all felt that, but I was really blown away by not only the people here, but the landscape in Wales, and I really fell in love with it. So this is one of the love poems in this collection to Wales. It's called Keeping Warm, after Horatio Clare. Wales is a small coat with deep pockets, so I plunge my hands in to search for treasures and fish out. Steep climbs to fickle skies, wild rivers thrusting through a hilly landscape, blackbirds chirping sharply on a wooden zigzag fence. I pull out steeples, churches, the sounds of singing, bells, signs with words I know but can't pronounce, home words. In the seams, I find the skeletons of winter trees, crumpled forest ferns, flakes of mud. My fingers smell of damp and wood smoke, thin wisps of cinnamon, strong home brews. They are so much deeper than I thought. These pockets made of Brecon caves, dark and light, hot and cold, drawing me in to this warm and steadfast place. Yay, Wales. Okay, I'm just gonna do 2 more poems for you. So the idea of finding a home here, you know, I never imagined that, and I feel so lucky to have done that, to have made my home here with a partner. And this poem is about just that. So when I was thinking about fire, I was thinking about how it can destroy, but it also can cleanse, and how it can also be about rebirth and rebuilding. So this is just a really short poem called Domestic. I wash the plump beans, pull the strings from their seams, crack their backs until I hear the snap, snap, and expose their small kidneys, dull cabled to the inner wall, which is soft as felt, reflective as thread, then settle them into hot water I have boiled in a home I never thought I would have. Thank you. So I'm just going to read one last poem. It's the final poem in the collection. So actually 3 months after I moved to the UK, when I came to Cardiff to do my master's, I met Rich, who quickly became my friend and then much later became my husband. So we've been together for quite a long time now. And he is a wonderful Welsh man, and I feel very lucky to have met him. He is a gardener, a horticulturalist. He works for the National Trust, which is, you know, really wonderful, in a place called Dufferin Gardens here in Wales. And he has taught me so much about the earth and about plants and about gardening. And I feel really lucky to have learned those things. And that really spoke to me when I was writing this collection, these ideas of renewal and regrowth. So I hope that this will end us on a positive note. This poem is called How to Love a Gardener, for Rich. Love, like the horse chestnut, loves carbon. Like the sun isn't millions of miles away or doomed. Love, like a blue fir amongst white pines, like a wide shovel opening the earth. Rewind your favorite moments over early dinners, the correct identification of an olive tree, climbing 65 feet up a fat trunk, turning backpack pockets into houses for leaves. Love as eagerly as sprouting seeds, as hungry as a goat up an argon tree. Love, like you are spotting a red squirrel for the first time. Relish in your blooming knowledge of Latin, wood chopping, propagation. Love as easy as hibiscus roots drink rain. Breathe in the smell of earth-drenched boots, savor the quick-flowing photos of pheasants and hedgehogs and newts. Love, like a pioneer species. Love, like sempervirens, evergreen. Love, like every green thing ever planted, will live long and never burn. Thank you. Thank you so much, everybody, for listening to that. That was really kind of you, and I hope that you have enjoyed this session all together. If I can ask the poets who are in the room, if you want to put your website or your Twitter handles into the chat so people can find you. I can do the same so people can connect with me on Twitter or on through my website, or you can check out my book. So I will put some links in there, and if the other poets can do the same, that would be so wonderful. I just want to thank Mary before she comes back on and says goodbye to us. Mary, thank you so much for setting us up here. We really appreciate it. And I'd like everybody to give a silent round of applause to our poets, Ariana, Janel, Antonio, and Elizabeth. You guys were wonderful, and I feel so honored to have read with you tonight. Thank you so much. And what a joy and kind of heartwarming it has been to see all of these Marshalls, who I hope to get to meet many of you in person one day. But for now, this is a really nice substitute to all come together with you. So I'm going to start putting some things here in the chat, and I will hand it over to Mary for any other housekeeping things that she needs to say for us. So thank you.
Thank you so much. All the poets, that was absolutely amazing. What a wonderful way to spend a morning, an afternoon, or an evening, wherever you are in the US. I found that was profoundly moving. I think it was a wonderful way of bringing us all together, all the generations of Marshall scholars into one place. So thank you so much. And Christina, thank you for organizing it and hosting it so beautifully. And thank you again, all the poets. Hopefully I'll be able to get the recording off the cloud and we'll be able to share that. I'll probably tweet it out and share it as well. But thank you, everybody, and have a lovely evening and keep safe and healthy. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Christina, do you want to stop the recording?
Yes, if I stop, is it going to save? I'm a little nervous. I will stop now and see what happens.